Before I start my contribution, I just want to put on the record at all that I, along with many others, think that the leaking of this report caused an awful lot of hurt and distress and should not have happened. And I'd like the government, and indeed all governments, I suppose, to think about this. This isn't the first time this has happened. The Scally report in relation to cervical check was also leaked. These are both predominantly issues relating to women. They're very sensitive. They shouldn't be leaked. It caused undue hurt. I've said, and I've written to Taoiseach, that I actually would have preferred if you consulted with all the survival groups, the families and the victims, regarding when this apology would take place and what would be the content of it. You've made your decision, and obviously this is an important day, but I would have thought that would have been the best way to deal with this apology. The report of the Mother and Baby Homes investigation tells a tale of an Ireland that we have left behind, but yet it is not in our distant past. Reading the report, you would think that it is detailing events of a long, long time ago, but it isn't. The last Mother and Baby Home shut its doors in 1998. 23 years ago. I'm sure there are young people who are in their 20s watching this will find it hard to get their head around that they were born into an Ireland that still cruelly locked women away behind the high walls of such institutions. Because, although diminished, there were still some perceptions in 1998 in Irish society regarding unmarried and single mothers, that in some way there was something to be ashamed of. 1998 does seem a long time ago from the Ireland of the 1950s, 40s, 60s, that was so inherently anti-women in our culture and in our laws. But it's not that long ago at all. Each and every one of us know many people who've been very, very adversely affected by the shameful actions of our state, of our institutions, of our politicians, and all of us who serve in public life should apologize for our predecessors, for the fact we brought in illegitimacy in this Dáil in 1931. It was the law of the land. That's horrendous. We should all apologize for all of us, all of the political entities that served in governments that allowed this to happen. When this state was founded, in the first few years of its inception, there were warnings. There were warnings about the level of mortality in these homes and institutions. Nothing was done. A blind eye was thrown. And it continued. It continued for another 60 years. So politically, we're all at fault. The state is at fault. We're at fault. Institutions at fault. Women, the children, their families, they have no blame at all. And the institutions, the Catholic Church, has an awful lot to answer for. And we must really look at and continue to look at our relationship between the state and the religious institutions. We'll hear lots over the coming days of women who are forced into these homes, but not much about the men involved. These women who ended up in mother and baby homes didn't end up there on their own. Many were raped. Some it was because of incest. While there were some of the babies who were very much wanted and born out of wedlock to a couple very much in love. But our society at the time did not approve of this love. We know that many women who were put into these institutions were done so very clearly to uphold the reputation of men of a more privileged class and to hide their societal embarrassment. Our society went along with this, and this is our collective shame. I think we all remember as clear as day the findings of remains at a former mother and baby home in Tuam following the tireless work of Catherine Corliss, who is a hero to this nation. A hero to this nation. This publication is another step in the uncomfortable process of confronting the hidden shame of our nation. And remember, this is only relating to 16 institutions and homes. The Clon Project are right. We have to go much deeper. The hidden lives of women who were subject to the devastating neglect and abuse were shamed for their so-called, in inverted commas, sins. For too long, people were determined to keep these stories hidden, but now these stories are out there, and it will hopefully bring some solace. We have long believed in my party that it would be wrong to suggest that the publication of this report will be part of a healing process, because for many of the women and children involved, this is coming too late. For the children who needlessly died in infancy, like Anne, the young baby who died in 1968 in Shanross Abbey in Roscrea, very close to where I'm from. She was the daughter of a friend of mine who had no chance at life. And for others who left their homes and died before the state embarked in this process, there is no acknowledgement of their suffering to date. We can't bring that back. Nonetheless, I hope this report will serve to belatedly put some of the truth on the record, because I think it's gone past the capacity to put all of it on. But we have to do everything we can. Over 1,000 survivors bravely gave their testimonies to the Commission. It has not been an easy process for the survivors, but the determination to open society's eyes to what happened behind the high walls of these institutions needs a serious amount of gratitude from us all. Careful consideration must be given to this 3,000-page report and the 57,000 children that passed through these homes, and that's only of the 16 that are as part of this report. Some survivor groups, including the Coalition of Mother and Baby Home Survivors, have already expressed disappointment with what they see as the incompleteness of the report, which does not engage with the more expansive issue of state-sponsored forced or coerced separation of mother and babies. My party joins the Irish Council for Civil Liberties' call for a separate investigation to examine the entire system of secret adoption and family separation, to add to our knowledge about the shameful history and to build on the findings made in today's report about the 14 mother and baby homes are under investigation. Also, we should talk clearly about the children that were sold into slavery as domestic servants and farm labourers, because that's what they were, sold for slavery. Looking at the 14 pages of recommendations in the report, there is an evident and pressing need for the government to develop a clear and achievable timeline for the implementation of information and tracing bill. I am concerned, Minister. I am concerned. We cannot wait until the end of the year for this legislation. We've bailed out banks. We've brought in COVID legislation. I'm not sure we actually need this legislation. I haven't time to get into that today. But if we do, let's prioritise it in the coming weeks. We'll all work with you, I'm sure, to ensure that it's brought through as quickly as possible. Following the passage of the Commission of Investigation Mother and Baby Homes records, the Labour Party called for increased supports for survivors and adopted people. We need, once sufficient time is given to considering this report, we must return to that matter, that critical matter of all those supports, without delay. Writing about her experience in a mother and baby home and life after it in the Irish Independent this week, my colleague, our former Taoiseach, Joan Burton, has said that robust adopting tracing legislation must be a key priority. She said, quote, "It has been my privilege and responsibility to be a campaigner for key social changes in Ireland, divorce, marriage equality and the repeal of the Eighth Amendment. But the right of adopted people to their own information has never been conceded. It is amazing that this legacy remains in an era of such progressive change. I do hope the Commission will address this astonishing astonishing omission. This does need to be dealt with. Joan Burton is our former Taoiseach, and her backstory is an incredible story. We also, Taoiseach, need to ensure that all archives relating to social services provided by these religious institutions are nationalised. This is a very important point. They provided a service, it was in lieu with the state. We need to nationalise all the records so everything can be preserved. In relation to redress, we cannot do what happened before. We need to ensure this time round that those religious institutions make their contribution in relation to the redress for all of the families and women affected. And once they agree, and when they are made to agree, if they do not make their contribution, we will pass legislation, I will draft it myself, to ensure that we can take their assets to ensure that they make that contribution. We cannot go through what happened in this country before in relation to them not making their contribution. This week is just another part of a much-needed conversation in a dark part of our nation's history. I'm sure it won't be the last time we will discuss issues like this. The survivors need time to grapple with the recommendations. They need a huge amount of time. Some of them haven't had the capacity or actually the will to actually look at the recommendations yet. Those who have shone a light on the darkness that is associated with this dark period in our history, such as Catherine Corliss and everyone else, they all need time to look at this report.
Thank you, Deputy.
I want to pay particular tribute to her, to Joan, to my friends Rosie and Mags McKinney for sharing their story, and I know they're not happy, but I will work with them. To Jerry, whose aunt bought him out of Shan Ross Abbey in Rossgrave. To my neighbour Teresa Collins, and to everybody else who's worked tirelessly to get to this day. Today we are at the beginning of a journey into our past in relation to this issue. We have opened many doors. We need to open many more doors in relation to this issue.
Thank you, Deputy.
But most of all, we need to provide the supports for these women and their families into the future. And it's through those supports and showing some love for them that we can truly, as a collective, say we're sorry.
Thank you, Deputy.